Welcome back to Rafting Magazine, everyone. And today on the show we have Clarke from International Rafting Federation, who is currently stuck in New Zealand. And I mean, there's worse places to be. Everybody is not jealous of you or anything, Sean. But welcome on, and thanks for making the time to chat with us. And I know you're stuck at the rafting base and kind of living there. So tell us a little bit about what it's like and what you're going through.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for having me, Trevor. As you said, I'm stuck in New Zealand. I was due to fly back to Europe last month and head around, do a lot of events, basically spend a few months on the continent, Europe that is. But the pandemic has basically...
Nope.
Maybe you want to edit that. Yeah, I'll try not to knock on the table.
See, the pandemic's even knocking your phone over, man.
My pandemic is breaking my phone. Don't even get me started. My laptop died on the second day of lockdown.
Oh.
I am actually using the work computer. It's really, really gutting. So,
Oof.
Yeah, I actually have to get out of bed to use a computer. It's not the best thing.
So many big challenges, man. We're all facing
So many big challenges. So I'm stuck in New Zealand. I came here for the season, which was great. Beautiful, and you cannot fault New Zealand. I definitely recommend it as a place to come for any kind of boating. It's just so different from anywhere else I've ever been, especially with the rock formations and the geology, with it being such a tectonic place. Just the rivers and the valleys are just fantastic. I'm stuck here. There are definitely worse places to be. So just hunkering down as it gets colder, and I've only got 2 pairs of socks to see me through the winter. But we'll get through it.
Well, if anyone is watching from New Zealand, please send Sean some socks. He's going to need them, as you know. But so today we wanted to talk about training standards. And I know you and I have been talking on and off for a couple of years now about the GT&E system, guide training and education that you guys do with International Rafting. And I've been talking with several of your instructors, like Mark Hurst. Been talking with him a lot. He's contributed some articles and just some great stuff on throw bags, and also the clean principle as well, which I really like, and I've been pushing a lot with what we've been talking about. So, I want to reach out to you and talk a little bit about the IRF standards, and mostly, one of the things I want to talk about first was why you think training standards are important. And I think it's a big topic in the outdoor industry, and for a large part of the industry, there's a ton of there's just a ton of push for more standards and more certifications. So just want to get your thought. So what do you think about why training standards are important and how that impacts us?
I guess there's 2 sides to this. Yeah, there's such a big push, and the way I see the big push is actually it's probably coming from customers, and maybe not them, more like insurance companies. So they want to start making money, and the way they can do that is by saying you're not good enough, you don't reach a set standard. So there's a big push coming from that side to say we need to have standards of some sort, a certification of some sort, and if you don't have it, hey, we can sue you. I don't like that aspect. I don't like that style.
Yeah, agreed.
I think from a customer point of view, if you go rafting, and you go rafting in the US, if you go rafting in Slovenia, if you go rafting in New Zealand, if you go rafting in Australia, you want to have the same kind of experience. You want to know that you're in safe hands. And so the idea of having consistent training is kind of where I think a lot of the world goes to. So the GTE system was originally set up in 1998, and it was basically a formation of guides around the world who decided that we've all got different standards. So, I can't take a guide who works for me in Italy and just pick them up and put them in a different country because it's a different set of standards and everyone does everything differently. So that's basically how the system came about. And, each country there's loads of countries around the world that have their own systems. Me with British Rafting, we've got our own guide system. We're kind of aligning to the GTE system, and that's a work in progress. And so what we want to do is, at one point in the future, be able to say if you have a British Rafting or British canoeing qualification, it is an IRF qualification, and vice versa. So that's something that we're looking at to get down the path. There's a few other countries around the globe that are looking at systems like that. think in the US you've got a very, very different way about it, because each state is very different. So you've got, if you work in California, it's different to Idaho. It's different to Oregon. You've got different rules and different access levels to rivers as well. So I think it's a lot more complicated there. Unfortunately for you.
I can certainly say in the U.S. it's pretty bad for us. Some states, California is a very that's a good way to put it. And I own a rafting company in California, so I can speak to this. But it's like there's lots of regulation in California, but the one thing that's not regulated is raft guide training and standards. We don't have any. Anybody of questionable sobriety and skill can show up and be a raft guide, and that's companies have been self-regulating a lot more over the past 20 years, which has been a great thing, I think, for the industry. But we don't have a uniform standard in California. I went to Utah, and you have to get a captain's license in Utah, which includes fires on the boat and floating seat cushions and all sorts of maritime stuff that absolutely doesn't apply to rafting. If your boat catches on fire, you got bigger issues than that. But it's interesting to hear about the British standards, and I spent some time in France over the last couple of years, and they have an interesting standard too, that you have to get a guide license from the government and all those sorts of things. So, what in the future, like what would be your ideal situation with guide training and education? What would you like to see from that system?
What I'd like to see from GTE is rolled out internationally, and it's an accepted standard that everyone works to. I think that for us to say that it is the only standard that is acceptable for every single place on the face of the planet is going to be quite difficult. But if we say this is the baseline that we accept, and then so laws in each country are slightly different, so that we can say, right, this is the minimum standard across the board, but in place A and place B there's slight variations, or they go a bit further on certain rules and aspects. So, for instance, here in New Zealand, up until last month, rafting came under maritime law, exactly the same. Well, actually, it's still under maritime law until October this year, and then it moves over to the adventure activities regulations. So it becomes a little less about fires on boats and that kind of stuff. But that all came about because of a series of big public incidents. In fact, in terms of actual rafting accidents, it was a small number, but the publications and the publicity around them is what created this idea that it comes under maritime law to make it really strict and everything. And now I've gone through the NZ process here, and I can tell you, compared to anything I've seen anywhere else in the world, the training and the system here is very, very explicit. I wouldn't like to see that done on the IRF scale, because having been around to Costa Rica, Bosnia, the UK and everywhere else, it would not be implementable anytime soon, because it is very strict in terms of legislation and what it has to match up to. So I think if we have a set minimum and then each country can add to it, I think that's probably the way that I think it would work going forward for everybody. So that as a customer, I can turn up to any country in the world and say, are you IRF qualified? Yes, okay, perfect. And then are you, wherever we are in the world, qualified? Excellent, and I'm happy to go with it.
So, that kind of leads me into two different topics. One of them is the accidents, which I want to get to in a minute. But the first one is how you see businesses are reacting globally to IRF GTE standards and how they're taking it on.
I think it's on varying levels in different in places. So if I look at Eastern Europe, so I spent a fair bit of time in Bosnia and Romania and Serbia, very fantastic places in the world. I love it out there. There's been a love-hate relationship over the years, but it's tending more to be a love system for it now because of accidents that have happened in the past. And people are understanding that you don't want just some rogue person who's never actually seen white water being the guy at the back of your boat with a stick or a pair of oars, and when it hits the fan, they have no idea what they're doing. So there's a real drive and a real push. So we were going to have a summit there. Unfortunately, it's been moved because of the pandemic. So that was due to happen in, I can't remember what, July or something. To basically really push out the idea that we need consistency, and we want consistency, and it's actually being requested by customers for consistency and safety. When we were in Costa Rica last year at the safety summit, Whitewater Safety Summit, one of the things that really pressed home was that all the commercial operators came together for the summit. We had a lot of discussion about safety standards and what we can do to work together, and understanding that as a global community, everyone does have variances. Now, Costa Rica, I think you may remember, maybe 2 years, 3 years ago, had very high level flows, and there was a stag group, a US stag group that went out.
Yep.
That made big news around the globe, and there was an actual push for rafting to basically be stopped in Costa Rica.
Really?
It was considered unsafe. Yep.
Wow.
A real big drive, big push. So Joe, president of the IRF, and I, and Rafa, who's the honorary president, we met with the US ambassador to Costa Rica, and she was telling us a lot about this, that, without the push for the IRF system there, rafting could have been very, very strictly limited. And so, it's a big tourism hub in Costa Rica, so it would have been a huge impact to a lot of people and a lot of companies out there if it was limited. So one of the things that's been in development with the IRF for quite some time is the rafting operator accreditation. And so while we were in Costa Rica, it was agreed that Costa Rica would be the pilot site, if you like. Now, again, that was due to happen over this summer, but it looks like that's now going to be pushed back a few months. Hopefully it'll still get launched for later this year, next year, but at least the pilot is underway. We're working with Costa Rica operators there to basically look at how does the GTE system itself regulates raft guides, raft instructors and raft assessors. What it doesn't do is it doesn't assess a company. It doesn't somebody who's running the rafting as a business. So what we don't want to do is run an assessment for a company. We want to basically run an accreditation scheme. So kind of like a gold mark standard to say this organization, this company, this outfitter is meeting a set minimum. They're hiring guides at this level. They have these kind of safety procedures in place. This is how it runs. And that's the system that we've developed and we're now piloting in Costa Rica. So that can get pushed out. And then if you are just a general member of the public, and you've seen it, I've seen it, you get someone walking in and like, I'm really nervous, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I know you're all valid? If there's like a TripAdvisor and a symbol up there that says, hey, we meet the standard, you should be okay to come with us. But as always, rafting is a risk-based activity.
Yeah, that's it's kind of an interesting thing here in the U.S. too. We see a lot of that, and looking at accident statistics, I guess, kind of diving into that. It's funny. There was a study that was put out by a university in the United States that basically said your likelihood of injury for rafting is significantly less than that of a toilet. So if you're actually like in the United States, you're more likely to be injured by a toilet than you are when you go rafting. So it's an interesting thing, but also we see these high profile accidents, and I think those are the ones that set the stage for it. And if you look at something like the American Mountain Guide Association, and again, another U.S.-based organization, because I'm not so familiar with what Europe's like or New Zealand, but I am familiar with AMGA, and many years ago they had a big push for this on kind of a similar scale because of high-profile climbing accidents. And we haven't seen as many accidents in rafting, but those sort of, so what, I guess I should ask, what does that look like, and how do you get that out to people? I mean, how do people find out that, hey, these people are certified or these people aren't, or, what, I guess.
Well, at the minute, it's on a guide level, so you can check the International Rafting website and find out if your guide is certified with us. But the rafting operator accreditation will work to the same system where they'll have a certificate they can display, and then you can check online through the website to see if they have met that ROA standard. And that's the way that we'll go forward. So it's like a badge, an industry badge.
All right, so let's take a look at what the IRF system looks like, and kind of can you dive into the structure a little bit about GTE and because I know guides are going to be asking us like, well, what does this system look like, and how does it benefit them? So let's just take a look at the system first.
Okay, so basically the system's set up according to whether you are going to be raft guiding, so commercial with multiple passengers in the boat. You can be an inline, so we call it hot dogging in the UK. Duckies is also another name for it. So inline, you basically sat one behind the other.
Yep.
And then we've got the safety. It used to be called safety craft, but we now call it safety raft or safety kayak. But you can also be event safety. So you've got those three possible avenues that we do awards in. And you always start out at the lower end and you work your way up to the top. But if you are doing these assessments, you can basically merge them into one. So if you've already had like 10 years experience, you can just do one assessment, as long as you've got all the logged hours, etc., make proof of it.
Well, that's a real critical thing. Real quick, I'm sorry. Let me stop you. The logged hours. So what do you guys look for? Because I'm a big fan of river logs, but kind of tell me what you guys look for when you're assessing.
Basically for the logbook, there's a set minimum number of hours depending on the award that you're going for, and what level. So we call it a level, so that we don't call it a class, because that gets confused, or a grade, because that gets confused with river classifications. So depending on whether you're going for the level 3, 4, 5, there's a set minimum number of hours for each one. So it needs to be logged on river of that grade or above. That you've been in the position that you are going for. So if you're going for a raft guide, you need to be logging raft guide hours. If you're going for trip leader, it needs to be trip leader hours. If you're going for raft instructors, it's the number of courses that you've been attending to be able to deliver the raft guide assessments and training and assessment. And then the assessor is the top level, and there's only a few of those around the globe. But that's like the pinnacle one if you want to become the person who is signing off on the teachers of raft guiding.
And how long does it take to get, let's just say a class or grade 3 certification for raft guiding in IRF?
That depends. That's going to be the minimum number of hours. And probably on the spot, I don't remember them all off the top of my head.
Sounds good.
But there is a set number of hours that you have to be doing. But you also have a set number of rivers as well. Oh. Otherwise, you can do what we call site-specific, which basically means if you are happy to be working on your home patch, your home river, you can have a site-specific one, which basically means you're signed off for where you are. It could be a stretch of river, it could be a man-made center, or it could be 2 or 3 stretches of river, which are just all part of the one, and that will be your site-specific. If you want to be more than just site-specific, you have to show evidence that you've actually done rivers of the same grade or higher in different locations. So different locations, different weather conditions, different water flows. So all these things can be evidence on the log.
Okay, and if people are curious, I'm going to put a link down below to your GTE standards so that people can take a look and start exploring that a little bit more. But I'm kind of curious from your perspective, and I guess maybe the IRS perspective. In a lot of places, people have these self-taught apprentice-style systems, and what's your thought on the self-taught apprentice-style system versus a certification system?
I actually personally I like the apprentice style. If someone wants to get into the industry. The GTE system is not so much about getting rid of that. The GTE system is saying it's an award, you've met a certain standard. Definitely all for apprentice style, get people trained up and everything, but if you want to meet a set standard, then find the global standard, the GTE system, and do you meet it or not? That way we have consistency across the board, so it's not just your local rivers here, it's rivers everywhere you go in the globe, that everyone can meet the same standard.
And kind of more to that point, like, what's the IRF doing to encourage these better raft guide training standards? I mean, what's your scheme to roll this out, I guess, is a better way to phrase that.
So the whole system was given an overhaul in 2016, and it's kind of only just coming around to its first cycle, because it's a 3-year cycle. When you get your qualification, you go again in 3 years, so you need to provide evidence. So we're kind of looking at that now and seeing what will be done in terms of progress and how that's worked. Because it was quite a bit of a major overhaul in the system in 2016. So I guess right now we're in that kind of review phase of has it worked? Is there anything we need to work on more, or is it we've gone too far? From what we've seen so far, it's working, and we just need to get the messaging out there that the system is available. And there are instructors and assessors all across the world. There's even some in the US, which is amazing. It's fantastic. In spite of all the different regulations in each state. What we try to encourage is basically, if you have a local system, a local certification or guide system, that if your instructor is IRF qualified as well, then you can do both at the same time. So that you go along for one assessment or one training, and you get qualified at the same time for both systems. So you're not having to pay extra money, you're not having to do 2 sets of courses, you're not having to turn up to 40 hours of in-classroom workshops. The one thing about the GTE system, when it's being delivered, is most of it is on water.
That's great.
Theory stuff. There is a lot of theory stuff, but most of it you can actually teach while you're on the water. Or in a pre-course. Take a read of things before, and so long as you read them, then most things can actually be taught outside on the river or by the bank.
And how does this apply to? We've talked about commercial guides and things like that. How does this apply to non-commercial boaters? Just people going out for fun, and how why would this be a benefit for them?
This wouldn't be a benefit to them. This is about commercial safety. This is about client safety. But what it could do, if you are just a fun boater, so we watch you heading down rivers on class 5 R2ing swimming, you could potentially take this up. What it does do is it will give you skills. If you take a training with one of the instructors and get some more guide skills, so how to control the boat, how to maneuver the boat, safety standards, so what to do in case of a flip. So if you decide that you're taking 2 or 3 friends down the river, it's not a commercial trip, but you want to ensure that you've got safety with them. Why not do the training, learn a bit more, get a better understanding, and you may want to take this forward and become an actual guide and start making some money from it yourself.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I have a lot of people that come to me asking about training and where they can get it, guide schools, things like that. So do you guys have a scheme or an idea of if you're going to institute any, say, non-commercial training standards or anything like that?
At the moment, not so much. The IRF is guide training, commercial training, but we also do raft racing and recreational rafting. At the minute, there is no plans for a system for developing a fun, a casual boaters system. What we would recommend is basically turning up to a guide training just to get those basic skills. If you're just going to do it for fun, there's little point to you actually going and doing the assessment. But who knows, it's something you maybe triggered. We'll go and have a chat now, and maybe we'll put this in as a system for the future.
Yeah, and it sounds really cool. I haven't taken one of your courses, and I really wanted to. And Mark Hurst was going to come out and teach some courses, and I wanted to go up and do them, but of course they got canceled because of the plague going on. So kind of unfortunate timing. But I'm also interested in kind of your guys' approach to legislation, and this is something I hear people talk about a lot in the outdoor industry of hey, we need to self-regulate, and I guess I'm an American, so I got this reputation of being an American outdoorsman and being this cowboy and stuff like that. And, the government's not going to tell me what to do, and there's a lot of people with that attitude. Well, I don't own a cowboy hat, but people have a lot of. I guess in the outdoors we're real mavericks a lot of times. So people tend to get a little bit of animosity when people tell them what to do or how to boat or things like that. So how would you approach that idea of, I don't want the government telling me what to do. Why don't we self-regulate as an industry? What's your thoughts on that? Is it
interesting you ask? It's the same the world over. I think just the US has a lot more media about it. Yeah, it's the same the world over. Why do we need someone telling us what we can do? We know what we're doing. But I guess the idea behind having a global system is that you might not know everything. You might be focused. You know your local river, you know your local rules, you know your local clientele and everything. But if we pick you up and put you somewhere else, can you handle it? What's going to be there? What's the variance that's going to make you be outside your comfort zone? And that's the part of the GTE system, is it gives it consistency, a level playing field, kind of a minimum standard that if we pick you up and put you somewhere else, that you can handle yourself and still be in a safe environment. How do we go about combating this idea of self-regulation? I'm better than everybody. It's a tough one. There's going to be people like that the world over forever and ever. We're never going to get everybody on board. But if we push it enough, if people see that it's working, I think that's the way forward. If people see that it's working, if customers start going, we need you to be qualified, we need a certification, we've heard about this, why don't you have it? That's probably going to drive more people to go and get it, rather than just saying, I'm better than that. So prove to me you're better than that. How do you prove that? You can't if you're just self-regulating.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like a lot of this has to do with not only compassion for your clients, but understanding the fact that it affects us all when there's an accident. All it takes is one accident, and it doesn't matter. In the U.S., it doesn't matter. It happens in one place. There's one rafting death, and all of a sudden, every person, every outfitter, every guide, they're all affected by it. Oh, rafting's dangerous. Don't go rafting. Don't go rafting. It's a crazy sport. When the majority of commercial trips in the United States, like I said, you're more likely to be injured by a toilet than you are on a rafting trip in the U.S. And that's, I guess that's because of the preponderance of people go on class 3 trips and easier whitewater, family kind of trips. But I also feel like that's a really critical piece to it. What one of us does, it affects everybody else. I mean, we're not. And also, I place a high value on human life, and I think it's important that people have a good time on the river, that they come away from the trip, that they actually come home after it. But I'd love to see more about, and I guess do a follow-up video with you guys on going through a GTE class and show some media to people and see what it's all about, so that people can understand what you guys are talking about and what you guys are trying to accomplish. But is there so what's next for guide training with IRF? What does the future hold?
Well, I'm actually just going to jump back to one thing you said there.
Sure, go ahead.
And it's like, don't taint everybody by the same brush. So there's one rogue raft operator. I'm going to put it out there just because you're American, sorry, but Trump's Republican. It doesn't mean every single Republican is a Trump supporter that follows everything he does. I mean, from the outside point of view, it looks like that, but we know that not everybody is the same, so we shouldn't be tarnishing everybody with the same brush. But unfortunately, people do. So, when we've got a rogue operator doing something stupid or creating accidents, everybody gets hit by that same brush, and that's just not fair on us. So, if we can all meet minimum standards, we all agree to move to this minimum standard, then, if something goes wrong, then something's gone wrong for a reason, and then we need to look into it, as opposed to a rogue operator who says, I'm amazing, I'm the best, and then it all hits the fan and someone's down the creek without a paddle. We move forward together, and it makes us stronger together.
I agree completely. I mean, it's unfortunate that the court of public opinion is tainted like that, but that's unfortunately the world we live in, and it would be naive to say that that's not how it is. So I think as a way forward, that kind of answers that question too. Is that it is important. We're all. It's a very small community. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a boater somewhere in the world who doesn't know somebody that you know, and For instance, I went to France and was talking to somebody last year. I was planning to go to Kazakhstan, and turns out the cousin of my friend is in Kazakhstan teaching canoeing, and I was like, how is that even possible? I don't even understand this, but it's such a small world for all of us, and I think the more, like you said, the more we can move forward together and make a more professional industry and make a better industry for everybody. That's time well spent, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, any other thoughts on training and things like that you'd like to pass on to people, or
if you're thinking about it, just have a go. You can come along, do a training. You don't have to do an assessment. If you're like me, you hate assessments. I hate assessments. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it is. If it's got some kind of a test involved, I hate it. But if you go along and do the training elements and figure out if it's something for you. You could decide after doing the training that actually this is not what you want to do. You want to just relax, you want to chill out. But by doing the training, you've kind of got an idea of what that minimum standard is. And what should be expected of you, what the client is going to expect of you when they come rafting. There's a load of raft guides out there who go and do it basically because it's outdoors, it's fun, they get to pick up chicks. That's basically it. There's a lot of beer involved. But then there's others who do it because they have a love for it. You're going to meet people, you're going to get clients involved. If you want that kind of rapport, you're going to have to meet some kind of a standard. They're going to expect it from you. In this day of media and everything, you can have a TripAdvisor review, and if it's, hey, Trevor was a really rubbish guy. Well, he kept us safe, but he had really, someone fell out and he just kind of left them floating down the river for half an hour and did nothing. That's going to look a bit bad on you as you go forward. But if you know what to do in that situation, that review's going to be, hey, we had the best time, we flipped. Trevor looked like he was crying, but I don't think he was. He might have been. But we had the best
definitely
time.
Was. I definitely was.
Yeah.
And I think
that's the way forward. Meet a minimum standard. At least find out what that minimum standard is. Even if you decide you don't want to progress it any further, meet the minimum standard. We'll find out about it and then take it from there.
And I think for outfitters out there, that makes a huge difference too. If your guides are the first company I ever worked for, the manager said it's all about the guides. If you don't have good guides, you don't have a company. And when people, they don't remember the company, they don't remember the river, they remember are two things: when the friend fell out, and that crazy guy that was wearing a chicken suit taking him down the river. I mean, those are the things that clients remember from a rafting trip, and I think if we can elevate that, it just does so much more. So
I think that's one thing that we don't assess, and there's no way we can assess it. I mean, we can definitely assess it, but we're not going to give you a certificate for it.
Go, you don't have chicken suit certifications? Come on, Sean.
No, we got the chicken. We just take one with us. It's very sweet. But personality. You've got to have personalities of our guide, otherwise you could be a bit of a flop.
Well, Sean, I certainly appreciate you taking all the time to talk about assessments and talk about IRF standards and just talk about standards in general. Again, personally, I think it's a good thing. It's an important part of rafting. So if any of you guys have questions for Sean, you can always put them in the comments below, or you can head on over to International Rafting Federation, shoot them an email, and find out more about training standards and instructors in your area. And again, we'll put a link so that you guys can go and check that out and see what they're doing and see how that can help you. So, Sean, thanks again for joining us, and really appreciate your time. And hopefully you get home soon.
No worries. Thanks, Trevor. We'll see you on the river soon.